Ho, 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 ho. It's a lame job, huh? Hello and welcome again to another edition of the Rancor Pit. I said last session that I was going to go ahead and switch, since I had shown you guys a whole lot of D&D stuff. And I ended it on a high note of my two custom-made games that I had created at a White Wolf D10 system. Let's go ahead and switch, at least for a little bit. Now, I need to make something clear. When I say RCR, I'm referring to Revised Core Rules. Revised Core Rulebook, more specifically. This came after the original publication done by those fine lads, Bill Slavacek and his crew. And the original incarnation for them was what came after D6 WEG system. I know a lot of Star Wars role players remember the WEG system. It was all D6s. It was kind of like GURPS or Palladium or kind of like that method. This is not like that method. The original incarnation was original core rules, okay? And that was more equated to basically 3rd edition D&D, or 3rd edition D20, I should say. It was full of a lot of holes. It was full of a lot of problems. And I only got, I think the only book that I had for that publication, actually the two, was a copy of the original core rule book, kind of like this one, and the Dark Side source book. Regrettably, they never re-released that one for RCR. But because if you know anything about D&D, 3rd edition is directly translatable into 3.5. And that's what basically this is. This is kind of like the 3.5 edition. It can still be amalgamated into any of my games. There are just a couple of things you have to fix. Force Lightning is a skill. It's not a feat. So that's just one of the quirks about original core rules. And after RCR came Saga. Now, Saga was supposed to blow RCR out of the water. And for about that long, it did. Until people realized that whenever they were printing out all of the Saga edition stuff, it lost a lot. It gained all these other source books and other extra materials and whatnot, but the game treated you like an idiot. It was actually pretty relatable to the initial and then longevity reaction to D&D 4th edition, which nobody likes, nobody plays. I know nobody who goes after 4th edition books, even as collector's items. I don't know any troops that play 4th edition. I'll never switch from 3.5 because we own so many bloody books. I don't want to switch to 5th, have to learn the extra system, and then buy hundreds of more books. I'm not that rich. Maybe one day, but Saga, however, treated you like an idiot. It really dumbed down the play system, and I didn't like any of it from start to finish. Whenever it came out, I gave it a shot. I looked at it. I researched into it, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't. And again, same thing. I mean, I invested so much into RCR that I'd already seen the failure of 4th edition for D&D. I wasn't going to go buy hundreds of more dollars worth of books. Because, by the way, these books are expensive. Because these are read all out of print, right? I wasn't about to go spend hundreds of extra dollars going to buy a new system, seeing that it was similar to the failures that Saga and 4th edition are, compatible. So I stuck with it. I stayed with it. You might hear some noise. That's one of my players. We're gonna see if I can't kill his character here in a few minutes. So I stuck with RCR, these series of books, and the reason I stuck with it is because I had the time and inclination to be able to customize a whole lot of stuff for it. Now, what I'm about to show you, some of this comes from some of the other books, the Hero's Guide, the Galactic Campaign Guide, and some of the other source books that we have, the Ultimate Adversaries books. I made as like basically quick notes. But the one thing that Star Wars RCR doesn't have, except for the Galactic Campaign Guide, which is the closest thing I've got, is the Star Wars equivalent to a Dungeon Master Guide, a DMG. So, not only do I have quick notes in this particular binder, it's a Game Master. That's what you are in Star Wars. You're not a Dungeon Master, you're a Game Master. I compiled a number of quick notes into basically laminated sheets. Now, that wouldn't be a big deal except for the fact that after I compiled all of the quick notes that I needed, that would have basically been the equivalency of a DM screen. What I then did was I went through, it's the only floppy book in the entire series, I think, short of, you can buy the Starships of the Galaxy in the floppy version. It's thin, it's floppy, it's very worn, and it's the Arms and Equipment Guide. What I did was I created exactly what Star Wars didn't have at all. Not in the core books, not in the expansions, not in any of the source books. It doesn't have its equivalency of a magic item chart or rolling capability. So, I took a lot of time and effort and many, many, many mistakes in Excel, because I'm not that good at coding Excel. And I took the time and effort to actually go through. You guys can't see too much detail, but I compiled items that can be found, that can be rolled, that can be bartered for, sold, traded, awarded, and rolled for initial gear, much like the Magic Item Compendium did for 3.5 for D&D. I have a similar rolling system for all that stuff. I compiled it to be a stuff chart. You know, you much like the famed KOTOR mechanics, where you find a locker, you find a footlocker, you find a bin, whatever, wicker basket. You go, you either pick it to open it or you find it and you loot it. There's always stuff in there. I even went so far as to create junk. That's one thing that the D&D doesn't have. You know, you want to make a longsword, well, you have to go buy the base materials, you have to be able to forge it and smelt it and cool it and quench it and everything else. You need a blacksmith's forge, this, that, and the other. Well, because Star Wars has very little in the ways of physical gear in that sense. It's all either biomechanical or simply technological. I created a system to have, find, and use junk. Pieces of random stuff. This piece of random stuff, that piece of random stuff, you put it together with the appropriate skill needed, or the appropriate craft, or the appropriate extraordinary ability from a particular prestige class, and then you would have created exactly what you were after. Case in point, you can take junk, 500 credits worth of junk. It's been appraised, and this pile is, random bits and pieces. Well, 500 credits worth of junk, you can create, let's see, you pay 1/3 in raw materials, so that's, let's see, what is that? 1/3 of 500. I hate math. I'm a dungeon master and I still hate math. Pay 1/3 in raw materials, then you create it. You can end up making a blaster pistol, and then it works. It wouldn't be crap. It wouldn't fall apart after 4 uses or whatever. That's kit bashing. It's a whole other feat, but you could be able to create things out of junk. Shortly before we moved here to the new address, I was really into one of the Star Wars games that you can get for like Android and Apple. It's not the Galaxy of Heroes. It's not that one. It's the one that came before it, where you worked during the beginning of the Rise of the Empire, or just before the Rebellion era, which I can't remember which one it is, but you end up being like a smuggler for a little Shadra fan, like rebel agent. And that game, one of the mechanics I really, really liked was that you could buy or come across or find or barter for scripts, which was literally going to your local junk monger and being able to just delve into his junk and come up with stuff. So you would have your scripts, you'd pay. The better the scripts, the more the scripts, the better quality of the scripts, because they kind of was like money almost. The deeper you'd be able to pull, the more times you'd be able to pull, or the more primo stuff you'd be able to pull. And you could be able to get all kinds of crazy stuff. Why have to bother with trying to buy an Plastic E11, a blaster rifle, that the stormtroopers carry. When you have the possibility of just gathering these scripts, going to a junk monger, he may actually pull it from his, his stash. So I used scripts a couple of different times. I haven't fully play tested it the way I'd want to yet, but the stuffs list, the minor, major, and mega list, those I have play tested. Those have worked. I love them. I love using them, and I want to expand them even further because, as a DM, you had the Dungeon Master Guide, and you had a set list of everything from armors all the way to wondrous items. That you had this nice, neat little chapter at the back of the book. You didn't have that for Star Wars. So when I made it, I basically compiled a whole bunch of stuff: tools, weapons, armors, vehicles, sundries, illegals, all kinds of stuff, and then you just randomly pull from it. I'd love to be able to expand it even further, probably threefold, so that I could have other things that can be taken out of these basic list, to where I could put other basic stuff in there, and then have specialty stuff be elsewhere or rolled differently. Besides the stuffs list, I spent a number of years with help from all of my top players that are in my troop now to create prestige classes, to create rule changes, because unfortunately, much like whatever happened between 3rd and 3.5, there were still some hiccups. That's a good word. That's a good neutral word. There were still some problems with RCR, and some of it is an argue of like morality, some of it is an argue of ethics, some of it's an argument just to argue. We had to create a certain number of house rules to make this game run smoothly. One of the other things that I created that didn't exist anywhere was that whenever you're a Force user, you have your normal set of skill list, right? It's huge. It's just like 3.5. You got from appraise all the way down to, like, was it tumble or whatever it is? I think it's tumble. And from A to Z, you have a huge set of skills. But when you're a Force user, you also have a secondary set of skills that do not draw from an extra or an additional set of skill points. You have to draw from your whole skill points allotment. Well, because of that, because Force users couldn't be too multifaceted, what I and my fellow players created was a list of Force tricks. That term I directly took from the complete Scoundrel in D&D 3.5. They're not mechanically the same, though. Basically, after you reach 10 ranks in a Force skill, you would get a special and secondary application. And all of the Force skills got it. Light, dark, neutral, whatever. They all got it. We still have, I think, one or two, that we can't agree on, we can't come to terms with, we can't decide on, and sometimes break down into argument for what they can and can't do. It's not as easy as you think, because it all has to still be balanced. Everything that I created, which, by the way, was far more than I ever created for D&D, everything that I created with my players and on my own, it's all going to be game balanced. I garnered a whole lot of respect for game developers and rules writers like Bill Slavacek, Andy Collins, J.D. Weicker, and the rest of the crew that did the RCR stuff. Because whenever I had to start writing stuff and make sure it was balanced and then play test it and make sure it was feasible and people liked it, it was driving me mad too. So the prestige classes that I created are far and wide. I created everything to add to simple extra flavor, to elements that could have been in the Star Wars universe and expanded universe that weren't, or the concepts that I thought would be able to fit in parties, adventuring parties, and as hero qualities. And I created other factions, I created other prestige classes, and it added a lot to it. And I've looked at them all and I've tested them all, but I haven't been able to actively play test them all. There's a lot. And I'd have to get it would be nice to actually run a game where, okay, you're all, 9th level, and you all have to pull prestige classes from my set of stuff just because I want to see. It would be crazy. It would be too wonky. It'd be, this guy's hand to hand. Well, the rest of you are all blasters. Well, that's going to be a very quick session. So, other than that, the stuff that I started to get into later was creating maps. Not as readily needed as D&D. A bit different. I actually created one of the maps that I created I really enjoyed because it was a map that I did for a game that was a big party. That everybody was like really like bonzer that were into it. Was they had to take very fast swoop bikes. I think Mobqueps. I think it was Mobquep Flare S's, which are basically just engines with seats to sit your ass on, right? These are the ones that they were provided for, and they had to take it and do basically a cavern run, not like Beggar's Canyon, but it was on Tatooine. It was out in the Junda Waste actually, and the only reason you had to do it that way was because at the time there was Sand People and Sand People turret defenses that would have just blasted them to pieces were they on foot, and nothing else could fit in there, no other vehicles. So I did it basically by section. You have a pilot score DC requirement for this section. Either you do it full throttle and you don't get shot at, or you do it at normal speed and the same people are going to take a pot shot at you. You make it per section, and it was like this big like question mark loop almost, where it was the end of it. And one of the funniest things was I had a guy that was a power gamer by definition of what a power gamer is, and he just kept going full throttle, every single one. Well, finally he biffed it, and the bike came out from underneath him and hit the wall at full speed and exploded. And he took a bunch of tumble damage from falling and from speed and collateral and whatnot. And the other bikes, the other team, were coming up behind them, and he tried to do it too, and it didn't work. And it's like they lost like half of their bikes, so some of the people had to go on foot and go like full interaction with the same people. It was just funny to see, and it caused a lot of laughs. That game did, but the maps not so much. I try to create more city maps, or like if I'm using Nar Shaddaa, there's the Smuggler's Moon, I create like strata block maps. So I have this particular strata block, which is a kilometer by a kilometer in space, where there's a building and a walkway. This is where all this stuff is located. This is where you're at. This is where you're going to do. I sometimes include some of the maps that were in KOTOR 1, KOTOR 2, and to a lesser degree, Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. So I try to integrate some of it, but I don't. Like I said, maps with Star Wars are a little weird. I'd much rather create planets, biomes, people, and then adventures on the planet, rather than like localized maps, because they have like no longevity at that point. They're not like D&D where you said, oh well, this one appeared in this game. Well, now it's these particular people and it's over here now. It's a little more tailored whenever I do maps. But anyway, I've created other weaponry, other gear, other armors. I haven't really created other feats. There's only two real books. I mean, the Coruscant and the Geonosis book, the source books have a couple of feats, but really the bulk of it's in the core book and the Hero's Guide. I haven't really had to create feats. So, but yeah, I have done a lot of custom job with a lot of help from my players, especially for bouncing ideas back off of each other, and you using their honesty. Well, you're an idiot. You can't do this. Why haven't you done this? I use them as sounding boards very efficiently. So, anyway, that's I think all the time I'm going to have for the day. I have a lot of other stuff to show you guys that I'll share. A lot of other characters too. I made quite a few NPCs for Star Wars that I have in like 6 different locations, 6 different binders. I had to go buy new specialized binders because I ran out of room. Anyway, next time we'll talk about some of the other characters, and we will discuss. My wife got me this Fort Myers Pirate Day Festival. I use it to roll. Next time, we'll talk about this singular, harmless little dice. Until then, grab your dice and roll initiative.